Hi, my name is Kent Darr. I'm the commercial real estate writer for the Business Record, and I'm here today to host one of 4 panels that we have set up to talk about trends and challenges and opportunities in the Greater Des Moines commercial real estate market. We're doing this as part of a rollout of our first ever annual real estate guide, which will be published April 29th, and copies of the guide will be available during our commercial real estate event on April 20th. What we want to do is meet with local experts and get their take on what's happening in various aspects of the market. We focused on office, retail, industrial, and land development. Today's panel all has a specialty in the warehouse segment in particular. We'll touch briefly on manufacturing and flex space, but really in the Greater Des Moines market, warehousing and distribution centers has been the name of the game in recent years. So without further ado, I'll introduce the panel. We have Marcus Pitts, who's an industrial specialist for JLL based out of Des Moines. Jason Conway is Director of Real Estate Development for Minneapolis-based the Opus Group, which has developed a lot of warehouse properties in this area and across the state and the Midwest. And Jackie Johansen, who's Head of Marketing and Acquisitions for R&R Equity Partners, one of the affiliates of R&R Realty Group here in town, and another large developer of warehouse properties. Without further ado, we'll kick off with the first question. So what's the big issue in the warehouse market going into 2016? Too much supply, not enough supply?
Is that pointed at one individual?
Whoever wants to jump in. Marcus, you're the first to say something, so you can be the first to answer.
I don't know how this is going to go. I think for 2016, at JLL, we cover not only the Des Moines metro market, but I'm the industrial lead for the state of Iowa, so I'm covering a lot across the state. For the stuff that we're tracking, I'll talk a little bit, I guess, about the Des Moines market. I think just quickness to market and availability of product. In our last month's call or this month's call, we reported about 2.2 million square feet of active deals in the Iowa market. A lot of those are looking at the Des Moines market. In the Des Moines market in particular, available product today, you're probably, I think, under construction, including the Monsanto building, which is 600,000 square feet. You're probably under construction right around 1.2 million square feet. There's off-market product that'll be coming to market here within probably the next, I'd say, 6 to 9 months. That'll equate to another 700,000, another 1.2 million square feet. And then, there's some 3PL users that are looking to take that. So I think just, if you're looking at, the deals that are out there in the pipeline, and I mean, if you had to go into, if you're looking for 100 to 150,000 square foot of product and you need to be into it within the next 3 to 4 months, you've got a couple options, and that's, I think that's been a true statement for the last several years. And, just this year, the speculative component is starting to come into play with some of the stuff that Opus is doing. R&R Realty has some speculative product, NAP and Allball. But this is really the first year, Hubble's done some as well, but this is really the first year that we're seeing that the developers actually come out of ground with speculative product. Before it was, we'll put the sign out there, if we find a tenant, we'll build it for them. But we're seeing enough demand out there right now from a user standpoint that I think that speculative product started going
On the speculative demand on the speculative market.
Yeah, so Opus as an organization, we're based in Minneapolis, but we've got 9 offices primarily in the Midwest United States and also Phoenix. And if you look at and we're a developer of office, industrial, retail, multifamily, mixed use product in all of those markets. So we're busy and diversified geographically and by product type. all that said, in the industrial space, we have about 8.4 million square feet of industrial space, either speculative or build-to-suit product going up in those 9 different markets. So we're very active, we're very bullish as an organization on industrial right now. In our Chicago market alone, which is a huge market, we are doing 2 million square feet of spec industrial space right now. So as an organization, we feel that the industrial market has a lot of legs left. As far as we can see, 12 or 18 months, we feel really good about it. So we're going to continue to invest. And to Marcus's point, we're seeing tenants not giving themselves, quite frankly, enough time to make decisions to actually build. And so if you don't have spec space up, you're not going to have an opportunity to engage with the tenant on a particular need because there just isn't time to build because they're not giving themselves enough time.
Is that because of a demand for their services, or it doesn't sound like a good business plan?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but you see it more and more. Tenants just they're not giving themselves. They probably need 13 to 16 months to be making a decision, and they're giving themselves 9 to 12 months to make a decision. And it depends on what their business is. It depends if they might be expanding into new markets. They might be renewed. There might be play of a renewal versus a new build, and so there's a lot of factors. These guys can probably chime in as well on why tenants are not giving themselves enough time.
Let's get back to that in a minute. Jackie, what do you see?
Well, I think one of the challenges that this industrial and distribution center segment has is they're kind of getting the 1-2 punch. So they're getting consumer expectations that are wanting to purchase products online and get them faster. So we need more and more distribution centers. And we're seeing that. We're seeing speculative growth across the nation. We're seeing REITs very hungry for this product. So a lot of investments coming in, both foreign as well as local. On the other side of things, you've got an employee-based problem because there's a shortage of truck drivers, over-the-road truck drivers, about 50,000 short of what this nation needs. And every year they expect that shortage to grow. So I see that as an opportunity really for Des Moines and other metros that can serve and recruit and retain these kind of drivers. It's just like in the office market. When you have a labor pool, you can attract those companies. So as we talk with business leaders about that, we talk a lot about what Des Moines and Iowa are doing to build a network of truck drivers.
So with fewer truck drivers, you need to be even closer to your, since we want to buy things online at 3:30 in the afternoon, 5:30.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Based upon Jason's comment earlier, I think a lot of these industrial tenants, last time they went through the process of securing space, it was a different process as it was today, right? I mean, and we run into this in different markets that we work on across the state.
And the market was different.
The market was different. I mean, there's just a lot of factors that were different. And when we go into this, we represent some large users that are looking for bulk space in the Cedar Rapids market. Cedar Rapids has 2% vacancy, about a 22 million square foot market. And if you're looking for 200,000 square foot plus in Cedar Rapids, it doesn't exist. And so you're taking these users out to market and they're saying, hey, we need 200,000 square foot of product in this market, go. And then you're coming back and you're saying it doesn't exist there. But you can look in West Branch, you can look in Newton, you can look in these different areas. So, and I think that holds true for Des Moines as these users, as their leases are coming up, I think they're starting to see that. And so I think there's an education process there from, the market as it existed 5 or 10 years ago when you signed your lease does not exist the same today. So being more proactive, getting out, as Jason said, getting out instead of starting to plan that lease renewal, call it 3 to 9 months before expiration. You need to be looking a year and a half out on these things to make sure you're going to have an option in front of you. So that's I think just the timing and the change in the market is something that we're noticing.
Has warehouse development been, up to this point, been slow in Greater Des Moines? I mean, we're at the junction of 2 major interstates. Granted, we're also close to Chicago and other major metropolitan areas, but has it been slow to come on. I think what vacancies run around 5%.
Yeah, low single digits.
Which seems to me we have just the right amount of product. but
I
maybe
would,
not.
I don't know if slow is the right word. I just think there's a pent-up demand, and a lot of these users that are occupying the existing spaces, their business models are changing. A lot of these businesses are in a growth mode right now, so you're just seeing them need a bigger footprint. And a lot of times, if you're not planning out far enough ahead, that footprint might not exist today.
And I think Des Moines historically has been you talk about industrial in terms of clear height. So how high can you stack the product inside the building? And historically, it's been a 24-foot clear market. If you go to Chicago, if you go to Columbus, if you go to Indy and other large markets, the average in those markets has been 32 clear for years. In Chicago, it's moving to 36. In other markets, they're even doing 40-foot clear inside the building clear height. So just recently, 32 clear has kind of come to Des Moines, and so when a large national user that distributes throughout the country wants to locate here, if they didn't see that there was a 32-foot clear building available, they would leave. And so anecdotally, you would hear stories about, well, Des Moines doesn't need 32 clear because people aren't asking for it. But if it wasn't available, then people couldn't choose it as an option. So we've now seen, a couple instances of companies that have come to town, they want 32 clear, the product is available. So I think that's going to open the aperture for opportunity for Des Moines and industrial development quite a bit.
Who do we lose by, or who have we lost by not making that product available? I mean, has it been difficult for companies to locate here because we haven't offered the kind of product they want?
Yeah, so I can't say a specific company.
And a lot of those companies, if they're searching for that space, they might not be. Typically, those type of deals are fairly confidential, so it's kind of you don't know.
You're not going to know, right?
Exactly.
Sure.
They'll come, they'll look, they won't find it, and they'll leave. You don't even know they're here.
And probably using someone in front of them
Sure.
to going through a straw buy or something like that.
I think that the developers that we have locally that are focusing on warehouse or at least building distribution centers and warehouse are very savvy about supply and demand. They are in the know as to who's coming through town and who's looking, and they're doing a good job, in my opinion, of building not too far out in front of the tenants that are coming, but well enough that there's some speculative space, but each of those developments maybe have one tenant fairly quickly after they make an announcement. Not necessarily in hand when they go to develop, but pretty quickly.
But might have a pretty good idea that they're going to have someone in.
Yes,
so
they're having
maybe a
some of
little bit
those.
like a spec office building,
Right.
too, possibly.
That's right.
So what's driving the move to go higher? Just so you can cram more items in the warehouse?
It's really economics. So if you can rent the same amount of space and you can put cubically more in that space, your cost per foot actually goes down. So it's really more of instead of a linear square footage equation, it's a cubic equation. So you can get more product in the same amount of space. So it's a lot more efficient to do it that way.
Does that change the way leases are negotiated then?
It hasn't. No.
Now, what we see changing is we're doing stepped rents. So each year there's an increase, and we're seeing more and more of those step rents, even on the industrial side. We see it in Omaha, we see it in other places, but traditionally I think that's been more of the office arena. Starting to see that in industrial.
Yeah, Des Moines traditionally, I think, has been a pretty flat market. So if you sign a 3 or 5 year lease, the expectation is your year one lease rate is going to be held for 3 to 5 years, or typically a bump after that. But now we are seeing a lot of competitive space, whether it's new construction or existing, ask for those bumps.
Is there a lot of renovation that goes on Monsanto's going to move out of existing warehouse space into new warehouse space? Will there be a lot of renovation for that space that opens up to meet?
We're tracking. That's one of what I call an off-market type transaction we're tracking. So Monsanto right now, obviously, they're at 57 Park Avenue. Last year, our local team at JLL helped source about 900,000 square feet of 3PL, which is third-party logistics.
Thank you.
For industrial space. So think Jacobson,
Mhm.
you know, which is now XPO Logistics, or MYA Logistics, Brown National Lease, you know, those type of companies. And what these companies do is they come in and they'll have an account with a, you know, Toro or John Deere or Tones, or, you know, one of these big companies that needs warehouse space in short term. And short term can mean 6 months, it could mean 5 years. I mean, it's tied to whatever their contract is with that company. And so, you know, product like 5701 Park Avenue, which is 500,000 square foot, you know, that type of, you know, I'll call it a B product, you know, that type of product, which is second, third generation. I think those 3PL providers find that very attractive, because it's not the new construction Class A where you need a lease term of 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. So a lot of that space is being absorbed sometimes before it even hits the market. And like, as I said earlier, you know, right now, I think within the next, by the end of this year, whether it comes to market or not, there's 1.2 million square feet of that, what I call that Class B space, that will be available at some point this year in the market. Now, whether it ever hits the market or not, I don't know, but you know, I think the 3PL users are a likely fit for that. So, and for the most part, maybe to get back in and answer your initial question, a lot of the times they're taking, I mean, as long as the space is clean, you know, room swept and dry.
Really, they're ready to go.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
that desperate for.
Yeah,
space.
they'll move in, take it as is, and start storing product and shipping it out. So,
Even these logistics companies, you know, they really need the high-speed internet, they need the technology for the inventory tracking systems. So if there isn't good fiber to the building already, they might not need fiber from building to building if they have multiple warehouses, but at least they have the need for high-speed fiber.
Is that kind of infrastructure available? I mean, do we
In some
have?
of the second
in some-
generation product?
Yeah.
In my opinion, in some of the second generation it is, but the third generation, we have to add that in. And that can be costly to add that kind of fiber network.
To Marcus's point, if you look at, what was it, the Maurice's building in Johnston,
Right.
that came on the market, that got snapped up, Johnson Brothers took that, and then I think MYA subleased from them.
186,000.
There's the old Circuit City building, 200,000 square feet up in Ankeny, that got snapped up. So I think any of this, you know, second generation space, when it comes on the market, there's users that are already talking about it and making deals, so.
How automated are these? Are these big employment centers? Is a warehouse a big employment center? I remember walking through an International Harvester factory in the 1980s, not knowing that 3 months later it was going to close, but it was highly automated. I mean, automated forklifts were going down rows of I don't know, wheel bearings, for example, and you know, picking them out, delivering them. There's not a lot of people involved in that. Is that what the modern warehouse is like?
I would say yes. You know, what we're seeing is extremely narrow aisles. You know, so such to the point where we're cutting a wire into the concrete, so the forklift will follow a tolerance of a couple inches on either side of the rack, and they can go back and forth. They know where they're going. Everything has a UPC code to it, and they need to know exactly where they're going, what product they're going to pick, and the tolerance level for moving in that space is very tight. And so it's all driven by radio frequency. It's driven by, you know, you think about a forklift that's going down a very tight aisle that's being led by a guide wire. That's what it is. And they have automated picking equipment in a lot of these facilities too. So it's the deals that we're seeing have a lot of companies that are spending more on the inside of the building, from racking and conveyor systems, then, you know, the lease rate is a small component of the actual deal, because they're putting so much money into the conveyor and picking and packing and shipping side of the business. It's really very interesting to go into these facilities and watch how they bring product in and put it on the shelves and take it off the shelves and ship it out. It's really something. It's a real dance. It's really something to watch.
It is, I got thinking about the spaceship-like qualities of a warehouse. how quick does the demand turn? I mean, how much does the global economy affect demand for this space here in Greater Des Moines?
You know, I think Des Moines as a whole, it seems, I mean, are there fluctuations based upon the economy, of course, but, you know, Des Moines is fairly sheltered from a lot of that. I mean, we don't see the highs and lows as you would on the East Coast or the West Coast or, you know, some of these other markets, the Arizona market, you know. So I think we're fairly sheltered, you know. Midwest as a whole, I think, is fairly sheltered from a lot of that as well. I mean, I think there's always a fairly strong demand. You know, we're tracking on the deals that we track across the Midwest. We have a monthly call with our different jail offices across the Midwest, and I think right now there was, I'm going to have to think to get the numbers right, but I want to say out of completed transactions already in 2016, there's about 13 million square feet under construction, speculative product across the Midwest, another 22 million square feet. Current product that is out on the market is 44 million square feet. And then current deals in the pipeline, and this isn't reflective of every deal out there, but this is the deals that we're aware of. There's about 45 million square feet of deals. So the existing deals out there, if they were all to find a spot today, would absorb all the, you know, all 44 million square foot, and you got a million square feet that just can't find a home. So I think it's just a real strong market right now. The Iowa City market, and Iowa City, Procter & Iowa City is a little bit of an oddity in the industrial market right now. That's a market of about 5.3 million square feet. They're experiencing vacancy of about 36%, which is astounding, you would think, being, I think across the state it's like 6. So Iowa City is 36% vacant, and P&G had a large contingent there. They pulled out of probably close to 800,000 square feet. And they consolidated that to a new 1.6 million square foot distribution center they did in Dayton. So Iowa City, I think there's some good opportunity there. But you know, with P&G, a lot of suppliers follow them out to Ohio. But where I was going with that, and this was true with the Maurice's deal, and this is why Maurice's ended up moving out of the market. A lot of these groups are, you know, we point to the Amazon model, right? When Amazon started, they put one big distribution center in the center of the U.S. and you know, that'll be good for X amount. Well, Amazon now has, 57 different distribution centers, I think, totaling 40-some million square feet. You know, and I think, you know, as these different companies are reviewing their logistics, how they're sending out the product, whether it's a fulfillment center or distribution center, a lot of them are pulling them to different areas of the market. So I think that's what, I know in Iowa City, that's what affected that market, but we've seen a couple groups now leave the Greater Des Moines Metro and go east, because that was just a bigger customer base for them. So, but conversely, we got out-of-state guys that are pulling out of Memphis looking at Des Moines, you know. So it's there's just that constant flow. But I think for the most part, with the incoming and the outgoing, Des Moines stays pretty healthy from what I've seen.
Is this an indication that the economy's hitting on all cylinders? I mean, e-commerce isn't driving all of this growth back on this.
You know, the United States does about $4.5 trillion in imports and exports, and Iowa touches about 8% of that. So I would agree that we are sheltered in the center of the country, and we move about 86% of that 8% by truck. So that, you know, again, we're a little bit sheltered, and it does feel like we're hitting on all cylinders. I recently spoke with an economist who said we're probably at the bottom of the 7th inning as far as the cycles go. If you look over the history of the last more than 50 years, we're probably at the bottom of the 7th.
You know, it's interesting what Marcus was talking about. There's been this historical ebb and flow by large industrial users where their whole logistics organization and their whole supply chain group will go from, well, we want a bunch of small buildings all over the place so we can get to all of our customers. And then they'll flip that over and they'll say, you know what we need is more of a regional approach. And we need to have, instead of 40 small, we'll have 5 large, and we'll be able to serve them better. And then it seems like they go back to the original model. Either way, we all win. which is great, whether they want smaller facilities or bigger facilities, but there always seems to be this ebb and flow, and everyone's trying to get really smart about logistics and how can they get their product to their client better, faster, cheaper, and everybody is trying to build that better mousetrap of the logistics system to deliver what they can to beat their competitors.
Yeah, you say mousetrap. I was reviewing some of our JLL. Rich Thompson's he's our global logistics head. He's based out of Chicago, and for his presentation, literally one of the slides is, if you remember the old mousetrap game,
Mm-hmm.
and he points to that and has all those global points. We should have brought it for this, but
That's-
yeah,
that's what it is.
You're exactly right. The
You
old
know,
mousetrap.
we just built a building for Conagra in Frankfort, Indiana, north of Indianapolis, 1.6 million square feet, of building. It's 30 acres of roof. It's over a mile to go around the building. And, you see General Mills doing the same thing, building big million square foot buildings. And then you've got other people that want, smaller facilities. So to have the ability to deliver what a client needs is important.
And that's
So-
much land. We have, like you said, Kent, we have Interstate 80, we have Interstate 35, we have plenty of land that has good interstate access. And that I was recently speaking with a broker out in Seattle, and Prologis, which is the largest industrial REIT in the world, in 2015, they spent $460 million just in the Seattle market. And they have a commitment in 16 to spend $160 million. So they're very serious about that metro area. But land cost is such an issue there. So they're starting to build there like they build in Japan. They build up, they have what look like interstate ramps that go into the building. It's interesting on the architecture side. But in Iowa, we can build these sprawling, similar to what Microsoft did for some of their data centers and some of these distribution centers. We have very, very healthy, safe land costs. So companies can compare that to the coast and want to compete.
Land cost is good. I think there's still some opportunities on the northwest side of the market. I know both Opus and R&R have been active up there, for land. You also have the Corporate Woods interchange in Ankeny. Opus and Graham have been pretty active there. I think there's 400 or 500 acres of development ground still there that's ready to go. So I mean, there's some real good options there for the big users, and then the stuff down there off Gannett Drive, kind of up by the airport.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's plenty of opportunities for land. That's which is not the norm across all the markets. They're getting pushed further and further out.
Right.
Is there a land use competition for some of these? I mean, some of these locations are pretty. I mean, you could put a multifamily development into an office park. Is that?
I see some of that. Some of it too is as these different. I mean, the market is what the market is, right? You can't force the market. So as some of these municipalities are looking at, their planned land use as they originally intended 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, whatever they looked at, and then as the multifamily segment of the market continues to grow, they might have to look at taking some of the ground and pledge it to multifamily. And I know even in the Corporate Woods, there's some ground there that like the Chapman farm. I mean, that was one, but went through and had it rezoned to M1 light industrial. So yeah, you're right. I mean, there's potential. There is potential land use competition there, but the market brings what the market brings, and if you have someone looking to take down 120 acres of industrial, and you have to rezone a couple things to do it, that's a pretty compelling.
And I don't think you should forget about, infill sites. Yes, there's a lot of land on the outskirts, but, people would say, well, Urbandale's built out. Well, there's old product, there's old use, there's other things where you can assemble land that's well located, and if you needed to tear something down and redevelopment, we do those kind of deals in other markets, all the time. So it doesn't always have to be greenfield development. There's always redevelopment and great infill locations for something that's tired and old and ready to be redeveloped.
It's interesting to look at who's buying the land too. So if you take a quick look at the larger land parcels that have sold from the beginning of 2014 to literally today, about 54% of those are purchased by developers or companies that are out of state.
Yeah, I think the out-of-state, out-of-town, out-of-country owner capital that's hungry for ownership for real estate. You know, you hear these stories about they start on the coast and the cap rates get so low that they get tired of competing to buy product, so they move inbound and inbound. And again, anecdotally, and you would know more about this than me, but the capital that is hungry for product in Des Moines far exceeds the supply that's available. So,
But what are the cap rates on warehouse product compared with?
So if you look at the coast, you might see these compressed cap rates of 3 to 4%, where in Des Moines, you can find healthy 7 to 8+ cap rates.
They keep reading that cap rates are compressing everywhere, is that?
For the right product. So
Okay.
I think as a rule, you know, I mean, you know, like the Toro transaction in Ankeny, which is just under 500,000 square foot, you know, I know that cap rate was sub 7. I think it was probably closer to 6 than it was 7. So, you know,
that's Toro credit.
Yeah, that's Toro credit.
15-year term.
Exactly.
Single tenant.
Right,
Single
single
tenant.
tenant deal.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the product. But you know, for the right deal, we're seeing and you know, we just had, and I thought this is actually just here a couple of weeks ago at a client function, we had an out-of-state broker that says he thought he can get buyers in the Des Moines market for multifamily. I know it's not industrial, but into the 5s for a cap rate. So that's low. You know, that is low. I think the most recent closest thing on the apartment side, there's just a 6% cap rate that traded in Ankeny. But you know, I think on the industrial side and just on the investment side in general, you're starting to see that stuff for the right product dip down. But if you're going to take on a multi-tenant building with some re-tenanting and some cost there, and how do you do all this? You're right around that 8% cap rate. But I think as capital continues to chase this stuff and product continues to draw up in the major markets, you'll see that rate compress.
Are these the same investors that are looking at multifamily and other segments of the
Some of them
market, or do some
necessarily.
people say, I want to have a piece of warehouse?
I talked to an investor the other day, and their number one is industrial, and they said absolutely no multifamily. They said we like industrial, we'll do a little bit of office. We don't want retail, we don't want multifamily. And so it's investor by investor, you know, what their criteria is and what they're looking for. And even within industrial, they may say we want no showroom, or we only want bulk, or we only want 24-foot product, or, you know, they're very specific.
That's specialized.
Oh, it gets that way. It's very specialized with what their appetite is and what they're looking for, because they're trying to hit certain returns for their investors or whatever dollars that they're trying to place, you know, what those are. So that's why they're very specific. It's interesting to me that there aren't more sales in the Des Moines market. You know, Opus is a company, our model is to develop and sell everything that we develop. And so to not sell and to hold on to something is different for me. So seeing where cap rates are and seeing that there is such demand, it's interesting to me as to why there isn't more
Different culture?
transaction. I think it's more of a parochial market too. You know, you've got long-term holders, long-term investors, and you know, the other problem is, great, so I sell all this real estate and have all this money, then what do I do with it? Well, pay taxes on it, or I've got to reinvest at a rate that's
If you're
higher.
a long-time holder, if you're a developer, you're also a manager. I mean, correct?
It just depends on the business model. You know, you start to get that institutional grade investor, and they don't want multifamily projects under, you know, 100 units, and their portfolio is just multifamily product over 100 units, and they'll pay these cap rates for it because they have the returns. I think to Jason's point, you know, on some of this other product, you know, industrial included, I mean, you have your owners, I mean, you have her, R&R, Hubble, NAP, you know, a lot of the, I mean, it's just, they're family companies, you know, they're based here in Des Moines,
And they're long-term
And
holders,
they're long-term
and they
holders.
manage the property.
Right, and you hear that a lot from, say, someone who wants to come into this market as a property manager. It's difficult to come into this market as a property manager because of long-term, because you have family-oriented operations that build and hang on to what they build.
Yeah, that's just, and that's why some of I think the developers that have come in outside of the, kind of the core local group is, like you said, with OVA, they'll find an opportunity and buy it and look to sell out of it because there's demand there and a lot of people want to sell.
Right.
The Panama Canal is actually on schedule, so it should open in April. And I think a lot of people have watched the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal improvements. So it's interesting to note that the Suez Canal opened up in August, and their revenue is actually down. So now you could talk to capital markets and sanctions and the economy in general. There's not as much trade going on with the volatility of the stock market and whatnot. So you could talk to a lot of reasons why just in general there isn't as much traffic going through the canal. I spoke with Eric Starks. He's the CEO of FTR Transport Intelligence. So he kind of lives in this world of how is product flowing around the world. And one of the things that he had to say is a lot of the shippers and the logistics company would rather load a larger ship and take longer to go around rather than go through the canal because they have the time. If they plan it well, they have the time and they'll avoid the cost of going through the canal. So the shipment still gets to where it needs to be on time. But nevertheless, everybody's watching the dredging of the local ports. There's more and more of the deep panoramic ports throughout the United States and the world. So everybody's watching closely. But what we've learned from the Suez Canal is that
Since the time you first brought that up, I talked to a local construction company official who arranged his vacation so that he could go, he could observe and try to get a handle on all the work that's being done on the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one thing you said that time isn't money and should be money.
well, it's about efficiency.
Yeah.
If you can get, because these ships are just getting larger and larger, you can put more on a ship. So, and if you do go through the canal, so of course that's always an option, you pay by the trip, not by the load, not by the tonnage, which is interesting. But the Suez Canal now has two-way traffic, and they're not seeing the large increase that they thought that they would by now.
I think it's interesting, just 2 weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, they were talking about all of these large ships that they're parking offshore in Malaysia or something, and they've never, so everyone's looking for leading indicators on the economy and what's happening. And so all these shipping companies are actually putting these ships in, they're called mothballing. So they mothball these ships, they kind of wrap them up, and because they don't have use for them. And the point of the article was around the demand. It's all about the demand in China and how that is going down, and they're not exporting as much, they're not importing as much, and so they're mothballing all these ships. And I just thought that was interesting. I don't know what that means exactly, but when they're mothballing ships, that can't be good for.
You're marketing for a ship.
Right, it's a great time to buy.
Be the next hot market.
Yeah. I'd go back to your original question, Ken, about kind of challenges. As a developer and a construction company, we're very tied into what's going on in the construction world. And I confirmed this with our Chicago office as well, but if you wanted to start a building today and you were going to order precast on an industrial building, even here in Des Moines, and this is true in Chicago, it's 8 months to have that order fulfilled. And normally a lead time would be somewhere between 16, 18 weeks maybe. So we're seeing double the delivery time for items like precast because everybody is so busy. You look at Facebook, Microsoft, the data centers, those are all precast panels. You look at just the big projects, irrespective or outside of industrial, there's so much construction volume going on in and around Iowa that everybody's busy, which is great. But the challenge is, can you find people that are qualified, that have people that are available when you need them and in the numbers in which, you need them. When you get the precast panels on site, you want to put them up as fast and efficiently as possible. You don't want to take a year to do it. You want to do it quickly. So can you find the right crew that's available and can put those panels up when and how you need it? I think that's going to be a real challenge for everybody, at least for the next, through the end of this year, for sure.
It's one of those good problems to have, I think that's on me. The business with labor and hiring vendors who aren't swamped, I mean, that's really getting to be, how long has that been a major issue? And because you read that at least the construction hiring is improving, that I may not be at pre-recession levels, but there are a lot of these people who left the industry,
They're not
left
coming
the
back.
trades, right, yeah. Is it because fewer are required now because of virtual design practices and the like?
I think when the recession came through, people didn't have work, so they left the industry.
And-
They went and got trained for other types of positions, and now they're in that field of work. So I know at R&R, at least a year and a half to 2 years, we've really been struggling with that issue.
In the Twin Cities, you saw a lot of people leave and they went up to the Dakotas, to the Bakken region, and they learned how to drill oil. And so it'll be interesting now that oil is $30 a barrel and they're not fracking anymore and they're operating rigs, but they're certainly not drilling anymore. It'll be interesting to see if some of that starts to come back, people who left the construction industry because oil is no longer an option for them, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe they come back to construction, but there's plenty of jobs waiting for them if they want to transition.
Yeah, at all levels, I gather, too.
Yeah. It's agnostic to whether it's electric, plumbing, framing, concrete, all the trades.
And across the nation as well. I know in Omaha, the construction cost of rates, I would say even more than they have here in Des Moines. So the same kind of issues with so much growth and development there.
I need to touch a little bit on probably the market for flex space, which seemed to me was fairly hot a few years ago and is kind of boring right now. Maybe that's not the best word to use, but what is happening?
What I've seen, I think it's kind of curtailed. There's one new project, I think coming out of ground. It'll be on the northwest side up there. Howard's doing a project up on 141 in Grimes,
It's about 20,000.
Yeah, but a lot of, the stuff that Hubble had, they're on Birchwood, R&R's product at Aurora Business Park, some of it, and even the stuff on the northeast side of Des Moines, a lot of it, I think, it's pretty full. A lot of the first generation space, for a while there, you're sitting on first generation space that hadn't been occupied in 4, 5, 6 years, and I think a lot of that's filled, and now you've got a good mix of light industry and office users. I think filled a lot of that space just because, especially at Aurora,
Yes.
because some of these office users started to figure out that they could go into a product like Aurora Business Park and pay net rents in the single digits as opposed to paying net rents in the double digits elsewhere. So I think office really took down a lot of that flex space. Now, how much of that gets developed from here on out, I don't know. But I think that the product that is out there trades. There's another project that, I don't know if you call it flex or not, but the project on Northeast 22nd or Delaware, I know LL has a project up there, and I know they're asking high single digits there, I think, as Jack is asking for his product in Grimes. So other than those two, that's really the two, what I call flex product that have been to market here recently.
Yeah, I've not heard of much development coming up out of the ground, and I would agree that the R&R Park and the Urbandale Aurora Business Park, probably 80% office or more. It's a well-performing asset, but it is, for the most part, office users that like the price point.
Mm-hmm.
So we have John Deere in there, and we have some really strong tenants there that have been there a long time.
Industrial building at 5 to 10% office, and we're seeing 10 to 20% office. So we're seeing a lot more office going into, you know, a bulk industrial building than what we normally do. I don't know if that's just an outlier or what that means, but I think that means we could probably be just as successful with something that has the flexibility to go up to 30 or 50% office, have a little showroom in the back. And I think those vacancy rates are just as low as what the bulk industrial rates are in town.
Well, I think we're getting close to wrapping this up. I'd like to start with Jackie and get your closing comments, observations, touch on anything we haven't talked about that
Absolutely.
is at the top of your mind right now.
Yes, well, I think things are on the sunny side of life. I think we live in a metro that's winning awards. We're right on the cross of interstates. We've got investors that are looking. We've got a large amount of Canadian capital. When the exchange rates were right, a lot of Canadian investors moved their capital into the United States, and we're seeing a lot of that come into Des Moines. Not as much on the industrial side yet, but I see that continuing, absolutely. And if you look at institutional capital across the U.S., let's see, in 1995, commercial real estate was about 2.9% of those portfolios. Today, we're up to 8.8%. So we're seeing more and more investment, just in general, in commercial real estate. And Des Moines is enjoying the benefits of that as well. So I've read many reports that say that will go well above 10% for those portfolio percentages. So I see Des Moines seeing office investors, industrial investors, lots of land development. So as we work on the town that we live in and the metro that we live in, the state that we live in, we're spending on infrastructure. We've got great incentives for development for companies to come here. So I think the Iowa Economic Development Authority is doing a great job of going to Austin and recruiting companies to come here and telling the world about what we have to offer here.
You see some value in going to South by Southwest?
I do. I'm a fan, I must say.
Are you going?
I'm
Is
working
anyone
on
here going,
that.
by the way? Jason?
I think I started off as saying that Opus as a company is bullish on industrial, not only in Des Moines, but throughout the Midwest. And we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is by putting up almost 8 million square feet of space in the last couple of years. And we think that this industrial market certainly has more legs. And as everybody said, the Des Moines market doesn't have the highs and it doesn't have the lows. And Des Moines has been doing a tremendous job of marketing itself. Greater Des Moines Partnership and all the other economic development folks are doing a really good job of getting the name of Des Moines out there on the lists of Forbes and others. So we're planning on doing more in the market, and we're excited about it. And we think for the foreseeable future, there's a great opportunity for industrial, in Des Moines. You didn't ask about the presidential election and the effect on. I've been tired of asking that question.
If you want to get into politics, we'll get into politics.
Well, I just don't think it matters, for the foreseeable future, quite frankly. By the time somebody gets elected and by the time they get moved in and figure out where Congress is even located and start to make any sort of changes to legislation, it's going to be 18, 24 months down the road.
I will follow up on that, though. It seemed to me that in 2012, people in the industry were talking about the election much more than they are now. And I can think, particularly in the construction, I can recall a lot of interviews where they just kind of had their will and nillies a little bit, and didn't want to make a lot of decisions until after the election.
Yeah. I'm not hearing that from users or other people. It hasn't come up at all as a factor as to whether they're going to, play their cards now or hold them until after the election. It hasn't even come up.
Echo the thoughts of both Jackie and Jason. Des Moines obviously does a great job, and the state of Iowa does a great job of marketing themselves. These outside companies. The interesting things that I'm kind of tracking with the industrial market, other than in Iowa City's it'll be interesting to see what the next year of activity brings in Iowa City and how much of that $1.8 million, much of that space gets absorbed. You know, I think the average rents in Iowa City are about $350 net. So that's probably on the low end of industrial rates across the state. Other than that, I think the state average is $4, and I think Des Moines right at $5 for industrial rates, and we're really seeing that range across the state. With Iowa City left out anywhere from $4 to $5 is kind of where we're at now. When I say Iowa's average is $4, that takes into account a lot of smaller markets, kind of one-off industrial buildings that come up as well. But it'll just be interesting to see how all this stuff shakes out, and then for the deals that we know in the pipeline today, where are these going to land based upon what's currently available or not available, and what's that going to do to the user's mindset of, okay, we've got a lease coming up, January 2017, we should probably call somebody about, figuring out what space is, because if they haven't already made a call, once they do, they could really be searching for space, and, with some of this off-market stuff, does that stuff make it to market, does it not, what happens as it absorbs? So I think it'll just be an interesting year. There's a lot of activity in the industrial market across the state, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Great. With that, we've run out of time. I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have enjoyed it, I hope you'll watch our other videos on the office and retail markets and on land development. Again, I want to remind you that I rely on our readers for story ideas. My contact information will come up at the end of this video, and if you have anything swirling around in your head that you would think would make for a good story, I encourage you to contact me. I also want to thank Jackie Johansen from R&R Equity Partners, Jason Conway from the Opus Group, and Marcus Pitts from JLL from joining in and sharing their expertise on the industrial real estate market. Thank you.